Hi, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here. Today,
Oh,
my guest today is Allison Nissen. Allison, I'm so glad that you're joining us because you've got such a story to tell. You helped ghostwrite for the book called Resolve, Courage, and Hope. And oh my gosh, what a story this is. First of all, welcome to the show, Allison.
well, thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here.
Yeah, so the book that you wrote with, you were a ghostwriter, and I'm drawing a blank on the name that you wrote with,
Scott
Scott
Headley.
Headley. Yeah, there we
Yep,
go. You and Scott wrote a book about his story. You want to just kind of fill us in a little bit about that?
absolutely. It's a true crime story that happened in Lake Wales, and and he is an insurance agent, and he had an office in Lake Wales, and one of his longtime customers came in and kidnapped two of his employees. He shot them, he lit them on fire, he burned the building down, and then it ended up being a capital murder case. It was really a horrific story. And it
Oh
was one
gosh.
that Scott wanted to share, but he didn't have a way of sharing it himself. He needed someone to help him.
So we found you. You'd never really ghostwritten before, right? And decided, well, the timing is right. This is what I'm
That,
supposed to do.
that's absolutely correct. So the universe has a way of connecting dots, and that's all I can say is I think he Googled like writing in Lakeland, and my name came up, and he sent me this sort of oddball email, and I was like, well, okay, maybe I'll investigate.
Yeah.
The story behind this, for me personally, getting into ghostwriting, is that I had been a literature professor. I had grown up with dyslexia, which in itself is a challenge, and had been told that,
Absolutely.
I've been told that, well, you can't spell, you can't go to college. So I proved that teacher wrong. And I ended up getting a graduate degree, and I started teaching at the college level in literature, which was my true love. Well, I didn't get the full-time job because my competition had written a book. So that was the thing that separated us. And so again, the universe has a weird way of working. I moved from Texas to Florida, and I thought that's the perfect time. I'm going to write that book.
Yeah.
So I joined a writer's group, and I started practicing my craft. And then Scott sent me this email to write this book. And it was really kind of amazing that it all happened and that we clicked with the story. And so I consider myself lucky in that I was able to meet him and that I was able to help him share his story. It was a very difficult one for him to tell.
I imagine having the story out there was probably therapeutic for him.
Another interesting thing is he was always so worried about telling me the story because he was afraid he was going to hurt my psyche. And, as a ghostwriter, one of the things you learn is to draw the line between shrink and, and writer, because
Right.
that's not my skill set. I am not a therapist. And so you have to say, okay, you can give me the details and I can research the details. So he would give me some, and then we had plenty of newspaper reports and TV reports that we could find. The internet's an amazing place when to
Yeah.
do research today.
Wow. Wow, absolutely. Man, I'm sure that he was so glad that he found you. And you know what the thing is that you took the opportunity. He wrote you this letter, the timing was right, everything worked out. But it took you to say, yes, I'll do it. And it was a big endeavor.
It was a big endeavor. At one point, we got through three-quarters of the story, and then he disappeared, and I couldn't find him. And
Oh,
it
that's
was
not good. Right.
really interesting. Well, and this is in the book, and I'm not really giving a spoiler, but he had to go heal himself more.
Sure.
And so it wasn't just the storytelling, but he had to go heal himself, and he had quite a spiritual recovery at that point. And that in and of itself was something special for him. But it was something special he could share with me and his audience. And he's
Absolutely.
able to, his goal was to offer a hand to other people that have been through tragedy and say, hey, you're not alone. We can get through anything together, but we have to reach out and be together on it. And so, here we are today in this world that's absolutely crazy. And, so many people feel isolated. So many people feel alone and afraid, and they don't need to, because people are out there wanting to help. But it takes us that moment of actually asking for help.
Hmm. Sometimes that's the hardest part of our whole story. I'm talking to Allison Nissen, who helped to co-write and ghostwrite for the book called Resolve, Courage, and Hope. And she wrote that with Scott Headley. Let's talk about your involvement with the Writers Association in Florida here.
Well, the Florida Writers Association, so that's where I started developing my writing skill. I was a very good writer before that, but I'd always written academic essays. I'd not really focused much on my own on fiction or writing creative nonfiction. And I started.
You were the one in high school where I hit up. I said, "Hey, how much would happen? Can you write my paper for me? Write my term paper."
Not in high school, because in high school I was still struggling. It wasn't until much later that I was like, "Whoa, yeah." And spell check came out my senior year in college. It was like lights just went, whoa, and the world opened up. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I still had to look it up in the dictionary, like you still have to look up the right spelling, but It was like squiggly red line. I was like, whoa, this is amazing.
This is great. And then Grammarly. Anyway.
Exactly. We are so digressing. But I joined a writers group. So the Florida Writers Association has a bunch of groups. And now, of course, a lot of people aren't meeting in person. And it makes it a little more challenging, but there's a ton online you can find. So I found a writers group, and I was able to really connect with people and get honest feedback, not criticism, but critiques, where
people
they could
who were like-minded, that understood what you were going through and what you were experiencing.
And like add a little more description here, and the voice is a little flat here, and they could really help me pump it up and add the descriptions that I needed, and add the correct tone, and using the word selection can be so challenging sometimes, because there's like 20 words for the same meaning, and then you have to pick the right one, and sometimes one is definitely better than the other, and so that is something that's really important. But when you can find your community and you can find your writers community, that is the absolute way to go. You can tap into them. They're an excellent resource. And I got involved with the Florida Writers Association. I went to a conference, and then went to another conference. I went to another conference, and I got so excited. I joined the board of directors, and I became the president. And now I just do webinars, and I do podcasts. So I have the Florida Writer Podcast,
which is excellent, by the way.
Oh, and it's so much fun for me, because all I do is sit there and talk to the authors about writing. Like, what is there a better way to spend my time? I don't think so.
Allison, I got to tell you, I mean, people want to know about the books, but even more than that, they want to know the heart behind the author. Who are they? They want to make that emotional connection, right? So people are doing trailers for books, but they want to know about the author.
Absolutely.
What their inspiration was. Yeah.
I look at the authors as much as I look at the books, because authors are inspirational. Where do they get those ideas? And oh my gosh, some things are so creative, and I'm like, wow, my eyes just pop out. Like how do they even think up stuff? And so that's when you start to really get to know the author. You're like, then it makes sense.
Absolutely.
But if the author is just a flat picture on the back of a book jacket, it's and those and the blurbs are great, but they're only 100, 200 words or so. And
right. It's one dimensional. This is life. Bring them to life. That's what you're doing.
Exactly.
First of all, how would you encourage someone to join the Florida Writers Association?
Piece of cake. And you know what? We have a conference coming up in October. And if you sign up for the conference, and if you are a member, it's super inexpensive this year because it's online. Mm-hmm. If you're not a member and you sign up, you actually get a free 1-year membership with it. And so I encourage everyone to go to floridawriters.net.
Okay,
we will get all the information you need. You'll also see links to the podcast, to the webinars that we have, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
And one more thing before we wrap up, link to the book to buy it.
Resolve, Courage, Hope on Amazon is the best spot.
Allison, you rock. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great one.
I'm glad you had me. Good to see you. Bye.